The
Please help
winter
me.
market was alive with sparkling lights and the warm smell of cinnamon. Snow fell gently on the cobblestone square, and sellers called out their goods beneath striped awnings. Among the evening shoppers, a little girl sat quietly in her wheelchair, watching the world move around her. Her name was Emma, and she was 7 years old. She had blonde hair that caught the light, bright eyes full of wonder, and a pink knitted hat pulled snugly over her ears. Her winter coat matched her hat, and though her legs couldn't carry her, her spirit was stronger than most children twice her age. She sat beside a bench near the fountain, her small hands folded in her lap, watching families pass by with their shopping bags and laughter. Not far away stood a man who seemed out of place among the casual evening crowd. His name was Richard Hayes, and he was 42 years old. He wore an expensive dark coat over a tailored suit, and his hair was swept back with the practiced care of someone used to important meetings and photographers. He was a billionaire, though he tried not to think about that word too often. It made him feel alone, separated. Richard had come to the market without his usual group. No helpers, no security guards hovering nearby. He'd told them all he wanted one evening to himself, just to walk and think. His life had become a series of boardrooms and charity events, of people wanting things from him, of emptiness dressed up as success. He was searching for something real, though he couldn't quite name what it was. As he wandered past the cellar stalls, his eyes found Emma. There was something about the way she sat there, so peaceful and watching, that made him pause. She wasn't asking for anything. She wasn't reaching out to people walking by. She was simply there, present in a way that most people never are. He walked closer slowly, not wanting to startle her. When he was a few feet away, he stopped and smiled gently. "Hello there," he said, his voice soft and kind. "That's a lovely hat you're wearing." Emma looked up at him with those bright, trusting eyes. A small smile touched her lips. "Thank you," she said quietly. "My mom made it for me." Richard felt something shift in his chest. There was no fear in her face, no scheming, just a child's simple honesty. "Your mother sounds talented," he said, bending down so he was at her eye level. The wet ground soaked into his expensive pants. But he didn't care. "Is she here with you?" Emma nodded toward a small coffee cart across the square. "She's working. She works every evening so we can have a home." Richard followed her look and saw a woman in her early 30s, thin and tired looking, serving coffee to customers with practiced speed. Her name was Sarah, and she had the same blonde hair as her daughter, pulled back in a simple ponytail. Her coat was worn at the elbows, and her hands moved quickly, as if every moment counted. There was a quiet strength in the way she worked, a toughness that reminded Richard of his own mother years ago. "She works hard," Emma said, her voice filled with pride. "She's the best mom in the whole world." Richard looked back at the little girl. There was such love in her voice, such certainty. He realized he was seeing something he'd forgotten existed in his world of contracts and deals. Pure, simple devotion. "I can see that," he said gently. "You must be very proud of her." "I am," Emma said. Then, after a pause, she added, "Sometimes I wish I could help her more. She gets so tired." Richard felt his throat tighten. He'd been thinking about children lately, about adoption, about filling the huge empty house he lived in with something other than silence. He'd met with agencies, looked at files, attended presentations, but everything had felt like a transaction, like he was shopping rather than opening his heart. But here, in this moment, sitting in the snow with this amazing child, he felt something different, something real. "Emma," he said carefully, "would you mind if I asked you something?" She tilted her head, curious. "Okay. I've been thinking about family, about what it means to take care of someone and to be taken care of. And I wonder," he paused, choosing his word with the care he usually saved for business deals, but this time with genuine feeling behind them. "I wonder if you might like to come live with me. I have a big house with lots of room. You'd have your own space, anything you needed. I could make sure you had the best doctors, the best schools. I could give you a good life." Emma's eyes grew wide. For a moment, she said nothing, and Richard worried he'd been too forward, too bold. But then she spoke, and her words stopped his heart. "That's very kind," she said softly, "but I can't leave my mom. She needs me." Richard felt both moved and confused. "Emma, I would make sure your mother was taken care of. I could help her too. Give her money so she wouldn't have to work so hard." But Emma was shaking her head, and there were tears forming in those bright eyes now. "You don't understand," she whispered. "If I left her, she'd be all alone. She'd have nobody to come home to, nobody to tell about her day, nobody to hug her when she's sad." The words hit Richard like a wave. This child understood something he'd spent 42 years trying to figure out. That money couldn't buy what mattered most. That love wasn't about what you could provide, but about who you showed up for, who you chose every single day. "I see," he said quietly, and he truly did. Emma wiped her eyes with her small hand. Then she looked at him with an expression far older than her years, filled with a wisdom that took Richard's breath away. "Please," she said, her voice shaking but determined. "Please don't adopt me. Adopt my mom instead." Richard blinked, certain he'd heard wrong. "What?" "Adopt my mom," Emma repeated. "She's the one who needs a family. She's the one who's all alone except for me. She works so hard and never complains. She never buys anything for herself. She makes me hats and tells me stories and makes everything okay, even when things are hard. But she has nobody to take care of her, nobody to make her feel special." Tears were rolling down Emma's cheeks now, but she kept talking, the words pouring out of her like they'd been held inside for a long time. "If you adopted her, we'd both have a family. We'd all have each other, and my mom wouldn't be alone anymore. She wouldn't have to be so tired all the time. She could smile more. She deserves to smile more." Richard found himself unable to speak. He'd been in boardrooms with the world's sharpest minds. He'd negotiated deals worth hundreds of millions of dollars. But he'd never met wisdom like this, from a 7-year-old girl in a wheelchair at a winter market. As snow fell softly around them, he looked across the square at Sarah, still working at her cart, unaware of the conversation happening in the shadows. He saw her differently now, not as Emma's mother, but as a woman, a person, someone who'd been carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders, asking for nothing, giving everything. "Emma," he said, his voice thick with feeling, "you are the smartest, kindest person I've ever met." She smiled through her tears. "Does that mean you'll think about it?" He laughed, a real laugh that came from somewhere deep inside. Yes, I'll think about it." But he was already doing more than thinking. He was feeling something shift inside him, like a door opening in a house that had been closed for too long. "Would you mind," he asked gently, "if I went to talk to your mother?" Emma's face lit up like the Christmas lights surrounding them. Really, he said, "but I want you to know something first. No matter what happens, I'm going to make sure you and your mother are okay, both of you together." Emma reached out her small hand, and Richard took it, feeling the delicate fingers curl around his. It was such a simple gesture, but it meant everything. He stood up, his knees creaking slightly, and walked across the square toward the coffee cart. His heart was pounding in a way it never did during business presentations. This was real. This mattered. Sarah was handing change to a customer when she looked up and saw him coming. Her face immediately became careful, protective. Richard recognized that look. She thought he was trouble. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice polite but guarded. "I hope so," Richard said. He glanced back at Emma, who was watching them with hopeful eyes. "I was just talking to your daughter." Sarah's face immediately changed to concern. "Is something wrong? Is she okay?" "She's perfect," Richard said quickly. "She's more than okay. She's amazing." Sarah's shoulders relaxed slightly, but the tiredness remained. "Yes, she is." Richard took a breath. This was harder than any business pitch he'd ever made, because it mattered so much more. "My name is Richard Hayes," he began, "and I came here tonight looking for something I'd lost. I didn't even know what it was until I met your daughter." Sarah was watching him carefully, trying to figure out his angle. Richard understood. People like him usually wanted something. "She told me about you," he continued, "about how hard you work, about how much she loves you, and she said something that changed my life." He told Sarah everything, about the conversation, about Emma's words, about her tears and her wisdom. As he spoke, he watched Sarah's face change from suspicion to surprise to something that looked like wonder mixed with disbelief. When he finished, Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then she said very softly, "She said that? About adopting me?" Richard nodded. "She did, and she was right. I've been thinking about family all wrong. I was looking for someone to fill my empty house. But what I really needed was to be part of something real, something honest." Sarah's eyes were shining now. "Mr. Hayes, we don't need charity." "This isn't charity," Richard said firmly. "This is, I don't even know what to call it. A chance, a possibility. Your daughter taught me something tonight that I should have learned a long time ago. That family isn't about what you can give someone. It's about showing up. It's about choosing each other." He paused and added, "I'm not asking to adopt you, Sarah. That would be silly. But I am asking if maybe we could get to know each other, you and Emma. Maybe we could have dinner sometime. Maybe we could see if there's something here worth building. A friendship at least. Maybe more over time." Sarah looked past him to Emma, who was still watching them. Their eyes met across the square, and something passed between mother and daughter, an understanding, a question and an answer. When Sarah looked back at Richard, there were tears on her cheeks, but she was smiling. "My shift ends in an hour," she said. "There's a diner 2 blocks from here. Nothing fancy." Richard felt his heart soar. Nothing fancy sounds perfect. That evening, the 3 of them sat in a worn booth at Martha's diner, sharing pie and hot chocolate. Emma told stories that made them all laugh. Sarah talked about her dreams for her daughter, her voice filled with hope for the first time in years. And Richard listened, really listened, feeling more present than he'd been in decades. As they talked, Richard realized that Emma had given him the greatest gift he'd ever received, not in accepting his offer, but in refusing it. She'd shown him that real love means putting someone else first. That family is built on sacrifice and showing up and choosing each other over and over again. Over the following months, Richard became part of their lives, not as a helper or a savior, but as a friend, then slowly as something more. He and Sarah discovered they had more in common than they'd expected. They both knew what it meant to work hard. They both understood that the best things in life couldn't be bought. A year later, on a snowy evening much like the one where they'd met, Richard knelt down in that same market square and asked Sarah to marry him. Emma was beside him, holding the ring box in her lap, her face glowing with joy. When Sarah said yes, the 3 of them held each other as snow fell softly around them. And Richard knew he'd finally found what he'd been searching for. Not someone to fill his empty house, but a family to build a home with together. Emma had been right all along. Sometimes the greatest act of love is asking someone to love the person you love most. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, they say yes.